Hey guys, Pat here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and today we're working on a 2011 Ford Fusion, and I got the door all tore apart here, and the reason why I have that tore apart is because the window regulator went haywire on me. I tried to fix the regulator, and of course it failed. This little cam right here on the inside, the cable, this cable wraps around, and on the back side of here, this motor here runs the cam back and forth, so the window regulator will go up and down and raise the window up and down on this track here and this track on the other side. There's a cable that runs up this way and a cable that runs up this way, and they cross back together and run up and down on this motor mechanism, this wheel inside here, which is fed by this motor here. When you depress the up down buttons, they wouldn't raise or lower the window. I knew that the motor mechanism worked because I could hear the motor operating up and down, and the buttons are all working fine, so they got good contacts. So that led me to believe that the regulator needed to be either repaired or replaced. Very seldom can you ever fix a regulator. Most of the time you just gotta change them out and buy them. So I got on Amazon and I looked at a few with a little bit more expensive one, because this is the driver's side regulator that went haywire. I went ahead and spent a little extra money. I think I spent $65. I can't remember what it was, somewhere in the $60 range, and opted for a little bit more expensive one. It came with all the fastening hardwares. Some of the cheaper ones you come up with, they have a little bit more rougher edges. The metal might be thinner, the wheels might be a little weaker, they might not be lubricated, but this one here has everything going for it. It has new fasteners and all that. One of the problems I think that caused this to fail, and these are some screws that I put in on the new side, but this rail here was loose. It has some give back and forth. I have this solid right now because I put bolts in it. Likewise with this side, these were racking back and forth because they use rivets in this. I think that was a manufacturer used rivets because it's a little faster and cheaper than using bolts and screws. So I went ahead and upgraded and made this rigid. But again, the regulator portion of this self-destructed on the inside. So anyway, we're going to go in the shop. Alright guys, here we are in the shop. I carved myself out a flat spot to where I could do the work on the bench here. And this is how this comes. It comes just in a box and wrapped in plastic. Now believe it or not, this is a Delco. The cool thing about getting a little bit more expensive one, I guess you're going to be paying for the rivets. I won't be using these rivets. I'll be using the fasteners that they supply with the window regulator, but if I wanted to use those, I could. And here's a different size for a different part of the door, which I'll show you where all that stuff comes from. First matter would be is to remove all of these. There's 4 of those. On the less expensive ones, they may or may not have these, but these are little studs or posts that they put in here that are threaded on the other side to represent a bolt. So now you don't have to reach back behind the window with a wrench like I did trying to repair that old one, and hold a wrench on the back side of it when you're tightening. So we'll keep those in one spot where they won't get lost. Now they're going to put this zip tie on here so this portion here doesn't fall out. So we're going to keep this on here until we absolutely have to take it off. Now that I got that ready to assemble, I'm going to set that aside. Oh, the other thing I'll do is I'll loosen these up here. So you can use a Phillips on these, or a 10mm wrench to loosen these up, What these are is they hold the window in place. These pinch together when you go to put your glass back in here. The window will actually rest inside this rubber piece here. It sits in this channel and will clamp together and hold the window in place. And that can be loosened up with a 10mm wrench. So we'll back that off. We'll back the other one off. So this will be ready to accommodate the window. I'm going to go ahead and get this set aside so I can disassemble the old regulator. So this here, I use a 7/16. I'm just going to hold this on the bottom. Remove the old system. If you don't have any hardware, using a nylon lock washer on the back side is a real good idea, so it doesn't loosen up. Now if you have original equipment, they're going to have these rivets in there. You're going to have to drill those out with a 1/4" drill. I believe that's what I used. I believe the correct term for these nuts are nylocks. They got the little plastic part in there that keeps your nut from backing off. Now we're back over to the other side. This is actually the bottom of the door here. The last thing I have to do is remove this piece here. Now this is the motor assembly. I had this apart before. I operated this detached from this metal piece here, and it operated up and down just fine, so I know that's in good shape. This is a T20, I believe. Yes, a T20. I call these a star drive, but they call it their Torx, actually, a Torx head. A T20 Torx head to remove these 3 fasteners here. Okay, so you want to inspect the inside gear on this to make sure it's not stripped out, because that could be one of the problems that's causing your regulator not to function. So all of the teeth on this regulator motor look good. So again, what I had done is in order to test to make sure that this is in good shape, I went ahead and plugged the power source back into here and the up-down functions on here and operated this, and this operates just fine and dandy, this part here. So they also had a rivet here that got drilled out, and I replaced that with a 7/16 wrench, and I also had to straighten this out right here because it was bent. And with this, if you need to, I just got a bolt out of my spare bolts that was just a little bit bigger than this hole right here. And so because this is plastic, you want to be careful that you don't get too big of a bolt or you'll break this. But if you get too small of a bolt, it won't make new threads in here and it'll strip this out. You can also take a tap. This looks like a 1/4" tap, and tap this a little bit and cut some new threads in here for a bolt, or you can just go ahead and use another rivet in here. If you choose to use a rivet and you have to go buy a rivet, these are going to be 1/4" rivets here. This has a 1/4" hole or opening that you're going to have to use in order to make these work. Okay, with all that removed, I can take the old one and make it disappear. This also looks like it has a part number on it. I don't know if it's relevant to Ford or not, but the new one's made in Taiwan as well. They're probably made in the same factory, for crying out loud. Now, of course, it's number 740-140-320-16075 or 075. I just looked up on the internet 2011 Ford Fusion driver's side window regulator. So when you put the new regulator on, you got to make sure that these cross, and you got to make sure it's on the right way. So the speaker hole is going to be towards the bottom of the panel. I personally think this has been replaced before because somebody had put an X on here with Sharpie on each one of these contact points right here, or each one of these points where the window regulator fastens to this panel. So I think this is a weak link in the Ford product. Okay, so with this in place like this is the configuration that you want to see. Actually, this is what they sent with the window regulator. I like the idea of putting these lock nuts on here, so it kind of adds a little bit more security, so these won't vibrate off. So I'm going to use these instead. These actually have this wider base on it, so they're actually more secure. They give more security in the fact that there's more area displacement right here, so it gives it more strength torsionally one way or the other. But I like the idea of these not ever coming loose, so I'm going to put these on here instead. I have these fender washers, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on there just for a little added strength. It's not going to hurt anything. I don't think it's even necessary to put those in there, but use them if you got them, right? The driver's side window is probably the one that you're going to use the most, because every time the car is moving, well, you have a driver in the driver's seat, correct? Again, these are 1/4-inch screws here. Now the mount next to the speaker, it's a little different than the rest of them. It's got this little standoff right here, so you have to go up underneath the standoff. Now that at this stage, and we want to put a spool mechanism, or where the wire runs back and forth on this little cam or holding wheel, I hold that in place. I just cut that zip tie and pull it out of the way. Now this can fit on here flat. Now I can put my motor assembly in place. Still holding the mechanism in the back there. Now I'm just going to put that on loosely until I get all three in. Now the window regulator, it came well greased, so I'm not going to worry about putting any more lubricant on there. Okay, now that last one there, I can secure it and get the last three snubbed into place. Okay, so that's ready to go. So this is what I did to temporary the window to keep it shut. So if any of you guys are in inclement weather, or you have to take a break, or you tear the thing apart and you have to order a part for it, one way you can keep the window up is to put a piece of wood underneath here and just prop the window up tight into the seal, and that'll weather you in until you get your parts. Just go ahead and shut your door by leaving your latch and everything intact. And right here, when you remove your handle from the inside, all you have to do is just pull the cable and unlatch the door from the other side. You have to open up the other door, reach in and pull that open to get that open. So anyway, so we got all this opened up. I'll go ahead and bring that panel over here, the inside piece that we were working on yesterday. A couple of things you got to keep in mind. As always, if you do use a piece of wood in here, you got to remember to obviously remove it while you're got the opportunity. And then of course the window is going to drop down. So what we can do to secure that is we can put tape on here. So I'm just using painter's tape. Put 3 strips on here. Okay, now theoretically I should be able to remove this block of wood here, and that'll hold the window in place. Okay, now I'm ready to install the inside panel and window regulator. Okay, you can see that pigtail right here. That's loose right there. That's loose, so that wire cluster has to plug into that little socket right there. And you press until it clicks. You hear it click in there, and then that makes it a solid connection. The one thing I forgot to do is thread the latch cable back through here. It's got to go through this hole right here. And that goes on in between the window regulator slide here and this metal skin here. So it goes through there like so. And I have to put these, tuck these up underneath the window frame. The speaker wire out of the way. Hold my mouth right. And slip that right back up in there. Now there's a little piece down in here, part of the window frame, that gets caught up on the corner of the door right there. Sometimes that gets you got to wiggle it around and make that slip up in there, and you're going to fight it until you realize what that is down there that's holding that and keep that from, you know, sliding past the door frame. So the thing I was also remiss in telling you is that right down here, if you buy that same kit that I had purchased, there's two rivets that were smaller rivets, and that's for this little panel right here. And back behind this, if you remember yesterday when I was replacing the regulator itself, there's a little standoff that was on the back side of that. That's if you drill these out and take that standoff off out of there. You'll have to fasten these back again, but as I showed you, you don't have to really do that. You can get by without taking those out. These are 8mm heads. Again, I know that somebody's been in here before, because when I took the outside panel off, or the inside panel of the interior panel off, this screw here was missing. And like I showed you yesterday, there was Sharpie markings on every point here where the window regulator actually mounted to. So somebody's been in there before. That's must be a weak link. I've also had to replace the window regulator on our 2002 GMC and also our 92 Toyota pickup. So electric window regulators all across the board must be a weakness in all of them. So it's not just Ford. So anyway, there's a couple of little tabs here that this snaps into. And oops. Let's see, I want to make sure I don't forget to do that. And this little guy here, this little retainer, snaps back into that hole. I'll turn on the ignition, or correction, not the ignition, but the ACC, and then operate this after I plug it in. So the little clasp deal goes on the back side, a little part that snaps and retains it, the little retainer deal. That snaps up in there. I'm going to operate this. Okay, now I'm in a position to where I can see both of the fasteners, where I can tighten down the clamps that hold the window in place. So now that I have it to this point, I can shut off my ignition, or shut off my ACC again, and I can lower the window down on these two clamp port spots. Okay, now with both my hands I can carefully lower that window down to where it rests in those supports. And it's critical that you make sure, because the window can fall on the back side or the front side of those clamps. So a guy wants to make sure that it's sitting inside those clamps instead of on one side or the other. Now you can see the window is setting in the clamps, and now I just have to tighten up that screw right there, and likewise on this side. Now that particular bolt, I think I call it a screw, it's a bolt, takes a 10mm or a larger than number 2 Phillips driver. I want that snug, but I don't want it so doggone tight that I break something. I'm going to operate this up and down a couple of times, make sure it's going to function for me. Okay, so it's working. So you'll notice how the window labored a little bit coming up and down. What happens over time is that these tracks get dried out, and it's a good idea to put a lubricant in the track itself where the window makes seal with the rubber goods around the window, and lubricate that, and that helps to prevent early or premature wearing out of the tracks and the motor. They don't have to work so hard to get the window up and down. So again, turning on the AC, the auxiliary, I'll lower the window. Okay, we're all the way down. I'm just going to spray, this is just silicone spray here. Now that I've exercised that a little bit, I think I'll make sure that these are tight. Okay, now I'm ready to put things back together again. Okay, these fasteners here, a 9/32 wrench works on these. Now these little black gadgets here are kind of a one-time use zip tie deal to secure your wiring, keep it from flopping around. This is just reminiscent of a zip tie, and so I just clipped these off close to the edge here where I snipped them, where I had to cut it to get the wire out of here. And we'll just go ahead and replace those with little short regular zip ties to secure everything in place. But I'm not going to do that until I get everything plugged in. Okay, what I got going on here is I have the speaker wire. It's snuck in back behind the this panel here, so I had to take that back out again. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to plug the speaker wires back in again. I put the screws on the speaker box or speaker mount so I can find them again. Okay, so that's the speaker. I got the tweeter speaker up here hooked in. You just cut off the excess of your new zip tie. Ah, that's what this plug-in here is for. That covers that little hole, that access hole for the those clamps that clamp the window to the window regulator. Now there's a screw that goes down into here. I don't know if you've seen what I did there, but there's a little latch here, or a little hook that hooks into here first, and then snaps, the back side snaps back down into place. Now on the back side, this right here is where the bottom part of inside here fastens to this. So what I'll do now is I'm going to roll the window down. And that way I can work. This portion here has to go inside that rubber piece right there. So I turned on the ignition for just a second. I want to get my wires up here where they stick through where the door handle is going to go. Lift this up above that track a little bit, and you gotta wedge this back into here to where you get underneath this tweeter. And then all these white fasteners here, these little snap fasteners, you go right into these little holes here along the perimeter of the door. Now you just pop these in with your hand like that. I want to make sure I access my wires and also my door latch. It sits into place like so. Okay, you can see right here where this cable end, if I get my fat fingers out of the way, that cable end slides right into this right here. Now these two pieces slide together. You can see where this hole is for a fastener to go into. Well, there's also a hole right back in here. So all these line up, and the fastener is going to go through this hole and back into here and here and go into the frame of the door. This may have been easier to do with this door panel off of here. I'm holding this up with my foot. You can probably use a 5-gallon bucket or something like that and put underneath there. It might be easier. So let's see. And that snaps into place. Okay, these two holes right here, this hole and this hole, go into this little post here, this little plastic post. This post right here and this post right here on the back side of the panel. Then I reach back in there and get my wire. You know, every time you do one of these things, you think of a little faster ways of doing them, or little tricks that make life a little easier. And hopefully you can learn from this video and come up with some ideas on your own that might be a little faster than what I'm doing. Okay, so this piece here plugs into the lock mechanism, lock switch, the electric lock switch. There we go. Now I wanted to show you this little hidey hole here, this little cap. When you go to take the door apart, this little cap drops down here. You just take a little flat blade screwdriver and pull that off of there. This number 20 Torx drive goes in there and tightens all that together again. So I wanted to show that to you. And snap that guy back into place. It just has a little hinge on there that keeps it from getting lost. And then there's one more screw, which is the 9/32. Okay, this Torx screw here goes into the side. This 9/32 screw goes down through the handle hold here, or the door hold, and goes into the frame of the door. And the last but not least, this little T20 Torx drive goes under the door right there. Okay, everything seems to work. Well, that's a success. Now I just have to clean up my mess. So anyway, I hope that helps you guys out, and maybe some things to do and what not to do. Well, thanks for stopping by. Take care, and God bless.